Over the past few months, certain cosplay props been showing up in places you'd never expect, at least if you don't know anything about the anime and manga that it's from. A goofy little caricature of a skull and crossbones and a jaunty little yellow straw hat flying proud.
We're watching Mother's Basement, The Politics of One Piece, okay? It's from 7 days ago. Mother's Basement is a real ball knower. Obviously, this is an issue that's close and personal for me. And the reason why I wanted to watch this past week is because people resurfaced the trash take that I had where I called Luffy a terrorist, a freedom fighter. That's number one. And that was resurfaced recently because people were like yelling at the Trash Takes podcast for some fucking reason. I don't even know. But it was really funny because like they caught strays on that, even though they personally kind of understood and they were just like trying to make it a more entertaining conversation, but they got yelled at. The other reason why this is interesting is because the Book Talk girlies have basically picked up copies of the One Piece manga. And unlike many anime enjoyers who never see the light of day, who never go outside, who never shower, who don't have any fucking media literacy whatsoever, who are absolute dullards, who would rather think about aura, cool fights, hype moments, power scaling, and a number of different idiotic conspiracies that they engage in while they simultaneously turn around and tell you, oh, why would you say One Piece is political, you fucking idiot? There are plenty of them out there. These are the Book Talk girlies and the guys that actually do have media literacy. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're all, you know, the best read people out there or they have the best media literacy or anything like that, but they definitely have more than the average anime enjoyer. Bro just started watching One Piece and thinks that his Karl Marx. Yeah. Don't read Das Kapital. Read One Piece instead. It's just as verbose. You haven't heard of Agenda Piece. So I will admit, until I saw the TikToks of people making memes about Agenda Piece against the book talkers picking up copies of One Piece, I was unfamiliar with some of the Agenda Piece line items, except for those that I had heard in my chat. A shockingly low amount of people in my community that also are One Piece enjoyers are actually Agenda Piece defenders, which is very interesting. It's very, very interesting. But I guess I am a little bit of an Agenda Piece guy as well, except I merge Agenda Piece with actual author's intent, something that a lot of Agenda Piece people don't do. Author's intent is pretty fucking important in the media literacy side of things, which is part of the reason why I brought Oda's background or at least like personal political associations, or rather what he feels comfortable showing about himself. For those of us that are normal adults, what the heck is Agenda Piece? Agenda Piece is people that have different agendas about One Piece and One Piece characters and don't actually care about the work at all from the normal way that you would enjoy the content. And I think it's mostly memes in general. Agenda Piece Peak is very funny. Mihawk paints his sword black. Shanks is a rat. And Roger is a fraud. I don't even know why they say Garp is... why do they say Garp's real name is what is it, like enslave the masses or something? I guess Zoro is a racist, this kind of Agenda Piece as well, even though I don't really take it. Yeah. Warrior of oppression. Another is Buggy is hiding his power level. He is Shanks equal. Yeah. I've never been a Buggy fan, so that one also doesn't track with me at all. But anyway, let's just keep going. So there's like a bunch of different conspiracies that people have basically fucking followed loose threads on, because this is a work of art that has been around for, you know, people's entire lifespans. So of course there's like entire conspiracies around it. There are very long and convoluted conspiracies around it. It's just another way to like enjoy the art, I think. But this is not an Agenda Piece video. This is a Politics of One Piece video. And it's actually part of the reason why I really like One Piece. Let's take a look.
Over desperate protests and the flaming wreckage of a nation's capital. There are a few Shonen Jump anime one could say have conquered the world over the years, but none quite so literally as this. From New York to Jakarta, Paris to Palestine, Rome to Kathmandu, One Piece is being adopted the world over as the official manga of protest and revolution. Which must be more than than a little confusing to folks who mainly know Luffy as that one guy who was always standing next to Boruto's dad in Bleach Ichigo from, you know, that one anime that's way too long to ever watch it. Meanwhile, those who have watched it are just thinking,
Sniper King, shoot down that flag.
Those pirates just declared war against the world government!
yeah, sounds about right. So in the interest of clearing up that confusion,
Yeah, it kind of blows my mind that you can be right-wing and actually like One Piece. I can't get over it, dude. At its base, it's literally a bunch of terrorists beating the fuck out of sea cops, dude. I can't get over it. How the fuck do people watch this thing and go, no, this is a fucking real right-wing show? Like, what do you mean? It just doesn't make any sense. I know I'm just relitigating the same take that I delivered on Trash Taste, but there was a fuck ton of people at the time, including a bunch of like One Piece Twitter accounts that was shitting on me for that take.
and also just because I think it's really cool and fun to talk about, I want to examine some of the political themes that have made One Piece and the Mugiwara flag such lightning rods for radical and revolutionary thought among Gen Z.
Why wouldn't you just enjoy the show and think too much about it? Brother, it's not even thinking too much about it. It's not an undertone. It's the tone. It's the theme. It's
top-down
what
light
the game
action
is.
adventure.
What are you talking about? It's literally the whole thing. The entire story revolves around overthrowing corrupt tyrants. It's not subtle at all. It's about fighting against governments that are harming the people. This video is ironically going to explain all of that, but that is the whole point of One Piece. Watching One Piece is just like assuming that there's no politics in it. It's just being devoid of thought. Hasan LARPing as a communist is funny. Oh my lord, brother. I am a titan of industry. Know your fucking place, serf. I am the capitalist. I am Mr. Capital. Know your place. Okay, know your place. All right, hold on here.
Before getting started, we should also probably address all the folks who will adamantly insist One Piece isn't political at all. So, yeah, they're just completely wrong, both in the broad everything is political sense that no work of art can fully expunge its own creator's biases and worldview, and the meme sense that it has many queer and racialized characters in it, but also in the more specific sense that Eiichiro Oda has a lot of very strong opinions regarding governments and social issues that he builds most of his story arcs around.
Yeah.
Drum Island is
Yeah. I wonder what this anime is about that has like visibly queer characters and trans characters that aren't even like villains, okay? Or even if they are villains initially, they become like friends. All this stuff where one of the mysterious good characters is directly a revolutionary.
Explicitly about the evils of privatized and monopolized medicine. The entire East Blue saga is bookended with stories about different scales of police corruption. Skypiea is about colonialism and its ties to the romanticized
This is so funny. I verbatim, one by one, went through all of this when describing why One Piece was political on the Trash Taste podcast.
Exploration. Fishman Island deals with civil rights and the evils of racial supremacy. Alabasta and Dressrosa both
straight up greatest opportunity and yet the weakest. I think Oda's weakest political POV was Fishman Island.
Examine from different angles how covert foreign actors can destabilize and subvert sovereign states. Water 7 is about basically the CIA doing that and leads directly into a vicious spoof of Japan's guilty until proven innocent court system. Wano explores the pros and cons of open borders with a little side of trans rights. Sabo's backstory is all about how elites divide and conquer through social stratification. Robin's backstory shows how history can be twisted and erased to control political narratives in the Smithsonian. The entire Summit War saga is about the corruption and politicization of justice itself. Long Ring Longland is about cheating scandals in the Laugh Olympics. It's a very political manga. And when you dig deeper to look at the underlying narrative connecting those arcs, you find revolutionary politics baked into One Piece and Luffy's very DNA. Literally, Oda keeps keeps a picture of Che Guevara hanging prominently in his studio, and he's based more than one character on his likeness and history, including Monkey D. Luffy's own father, Dragon, the leader of the Revolutionary Army. Now, Luffy himself is not a revolutionary, not consciously anyway. His only political priority is the redistribution of meat. But he is a freedom fighter in the most literal sense of the term, that he will fight anyone who tramples on his or his friend's freedom, which naturally leads to him overthrowing a despot or two, since anyone who shares meat with him is his...
Like, the only counterexample that you can present here is basically that there have been many instances where he's like basically put a magnanimous monarch back into positions of power, and that's the only effective counterexample, like only effective counter narrative to the idea that this is like a socialist work or like a revolutionary work in general. And the thing that I would say in that regard is basically that like I think Oda is like, I've thought about this quite a bit. Oda is very governance agnostic. Like, he just thinks that as long as the authority figure, regardless of whether they're a monarch, a hereditary monarch, or democratically voted into power, as long as they are working for the greater good, then it's fine.
Friend for life. And for that, like many freedom fighters the world over, the dominant global hegemony has branded him a criminal and a terrorist. That hegemony...
Isn't that a liberal viewpoint? The system is fine, it's just the people are wrong? No, that's not a liberal viewpoint. Liberals are... The entire point of liberalism is anti-monarchy, anti-feudalism. If that was the case, liberals would love China, for example. They'd be like, well, the system seemingly works for the Chinese people, even though they have a one-party form of governance. Liberals would not shit on it if that was the case. That's the one redeemable quality of liberalism, is that it's anti-monarchy.
The world government isn't a direct allegory for any specific empire, but there are some clear historical parallels. Aesthetically, it borrows a lot from Age of Sail Britain, but the material conditions are a little more modern. A vast network of international extortion that drains the resources of subordinate states in exchange for vague promises of protection, while treating the citizens of unallied states as effectively subhuman, killing them for resources or just for the hell of it.
Fucking NATO, our billionaires being the dragons or whatever the fuck they were called. I can't believe I'm forgetting basic shit about this work at this point. Celestial dragons, yeah.
Nation literally built on top of a racialized underclass whose slavery was made illegal several years ago on paper, but is still carried out in practice through loopholes in the prison system, ruled by an elite class of lazy, malignant Nepo babies who are treated like gods basically just for existing, and if you so much as think about hurting one of them, they will bring the full weight of the state down on your head faster than you can blink. Though, of course, that last point applies to pretty much every empire, and that is the real point of the world government. The shape of and justifications for authoritarian regimes change from country to country and era to era, but the villainy masquerading as justice is an eternal constant. Justice, alongside freedom, is one of the two thematic pillars of One Piece, and much of the story concerns itself with figuring out what precisely those two words really mean. Every pirate is living a life of freedom, or at least thinks they are, while every marine at least claims to embody justice. But just as each pirate has a very different view of freedom and who should get to enjoy it, every marine uses their own definition of justice to justify their actions, villainous or otherwise. Fujitora, the samurai admiral, practices humane justice, with an emphasis on protecting innocents over attacking criminals. A noble ideal, to be sure, but one that's immediately compromised by the company that he...
That's my favorite fucking part of One Piece. There are good cops and bad cops, but ultimately, the system requires you to do evil. That's one of the best, most adult themes in this otherwise very childish-looking work. While there are people who are kind-hearted or have honest intention, ultimately, they're still doing the bidding because policing as an institution is designed around defending the status quo and defending the ruling class.
keeps. His efforts to protect people mostly just end up mitigating the collateral damage caused by his less humane allies, which is perhaps why he got promoted despite how many criminals he lets get away. It would certainly be a good PR move on the part of Marines who kind of need him to serve as a counterbalance to the determined justice of Ryokugyu, the cop admiral who seeks to achieve justice by violently subjugating everyone he personally deems to be undeserving of it, which is pretty much anyone who refuses to submit to the authority of his gods, the celestial dragons. Such people he doesn't even see as human anymore. Standing between those two extremes
you have no human rights.
is Admiral Kizaru, a fundamentally fickle man whose ideal of justice is unclear. He's a laid-back sort of guy, some might say too laid-back, inquisitive and open, if absent-minded, which makes him a fast friend to Dr. Vegapunk, but he's not particularly decisive, and rather than sorting out the complexities of justice for himself, he'd much prefer to be under orders, which he follows with ruthless efficiency, free of the responsibility of actually passing judgment himself. Though after the events at Egghead, he may no longer...
I didn't see anything. Remember, I only saw half of Egghead. I stopped watching specifically because I wanted to bank episodes. So I have not. Is it fine to unpause here?
At Ohara, to the point you can scarcely call it justice at all. It's clear that he quit the Marines in his heart long before turning in his official resignation, and without that ideal, it's really no wonder that he ends up siding with the black...
Wait, no, I saw this. I know this. Okay, I got scared. I know this. I know he sides with Blackbeard. I know that.
Blackbeard pirates after leaving, despite his kind nature. After all, as Luffy's foil, Teach is the ultimate avatar of selfish, individualistic freedom, and after a lifetime spent sacrificing his own freedom for justice, yet still being denied his final promotion by the Navy, it's only natural that Kuzan would swing all the way in the other direction. Former Fleet Admiral Sengoku's reasons for stepping down are a little more noble. His ideal of reigning justice emphasized giving the people of the world a sense of security born from knowing that the Marines were looking out for them. But when the world government sought to save face by sweeping the prison break of Blackbeard's new Titanic captains under the rug, despite the danger those criminals posed to an unwitting public, Sengoku could no longer reconcile his ideal for what the Marines should be with the reality of what they are. Though, unfortunately, his leaving paved the way for someone even worse. In keeping with his magma-based power set, the new Fleet Admiral Sakazuki's approach to justice is full scorched earth. He believes that the world will only become truly just when all of the evil in it, including potential evil, has been rooted out and purged. This is, if I may editorialize a little here, a child's view of morality. The reactionary idea that the world will become good if you can just get rid of all the bad people, as if all the suffering and death that you'd have to cause to make that...
I hate this scumbag. Monster.
...that happen wouldn't make you one of the worst people to ever live.
He's such a cool villain, but he's such a fucking piece of shit. Asshole, murderer.
But that childish outlook is right in keeping with the brand of justice endorsed by the world government itself, absolute justice, which is a pretty straightforward...
That stuff is still confusing to me, but I guess it'll open up a little bit more soon. Not the Gang of Five or whatever, but the other
philosophy. Everything that opposes the world government is absolutely evil, and anything the world government does to stop it is absolutely good. Even if that means cutting down innocent civilians just to get a pirate, or testing top secret experimental weapons on children, or nuking an entire island just to uphold the official narrative. And with that being their official party line, you can probably imagine what the Marines are like as an organization, especially under Sakazuki, worse than basically all of the criminals that they're actually capable of stopping. Besides a few notable deserters, the only good Marines are the ones who've crafted their own personal code of moral justice, like Kobe, Smoker, Tashigi, and Garp. But even Garp.
Oh, I heard that there is spoilers, hella spoilers here. Smoker, my goat. Yeah, Smoker is the goat. Oh, another agenda piece is Smoker is actually more powerful than Dragon. Do you think I skipped enough? Do you think I skipped far enough? Garp fan in 2025. I don't. You have to eat the spoilers. We do it all the time. This is such a good video. HasanAbi is big brain. Hasan says Mugiwara instead of Straw Hat. Hasan says Gorosei instead of Five Elders. Hasan says Akagami no Shanks instead of Red Hair Shanks. Boa Huncock. Yeah, I'm garping my shit. Maybe skip this, man. Okay, calm down, dude. We're not skipping it. It's a really good video. Eat the spoilers or don't want.
Our absolutist, potential ally alienating. All that passion can be twisted to unjust ends. One Piece frequently pits the forces of freedom and justice against each other. It's the most persistent conflict in the entire series, present from the moment that Luffy met Kobe. And that conflict is a dialectic one, intended to produce a synthesis between the extremes of the Marines and pirates. Between those who claim to uphold justice while protecting the world's greatest and richest criminals from
fucking nailing it. Jesus Christ, I gotta pee.
It, and those who seize freedom for themselves at the expense of the weakest and poorest. A truly universal brand of justice that none are allowed to stand above, whose purpose is to protect instead of restrict freedom. Because you cannot have true freedom unless all who would trample on it are brought to justice. And until all men are free, justice can never be truly absolute. Earlier, I called Luffy a freedom fighter, but I'm far from the first influencer to do so. Hasan Piker used those very same words to describe him, and he's thrown even more contentious labels at the series, arguing that One Piece is communist and Luffy is Antifa, which are pretty strong claims to make, especially about a kid's cartoon that started in the 90s. But that doesn't mean they're not worth considering. So, is there anything in the text that backs them up? Well, One Piece does portray many of its villains, from Eneru with his surveillance state to the world government with its everything, through explicit, direct parallels to real fascist regimes. And Luffy does punch a whole lot of ethno-fascists and theo-fascists and crypto-fascists and croco-fascists right in their stupid fascist faces. But, as I've already said, that's not necessarily out of a committed ideological opposition to fascism itself, so much as the fact that fascists keep getting in the way of him and his friends' dreams and or meat. Luffy only ends up punching so many of these pieces of shit because he's a naturally good person. He doesn't need to be told that they're enemies of freedom. He can simply see it for himself from their heinously evil words.
I also think Luffy is the way that he is because he's almost like gum-like, if that makes sense, where everything bounces off of him, where he is just, he's not trying. Like, he's just good. He's not trying. He doesn't have like any sort of ideological commitment. And I think that's by design. He's basically Rubber Man. He is just gum. That's what it is. There is a reason why all of the other characters, even down to Zoro and all the other characters, both on the villain side, both on the good guy side, they all have like very clear agendas. They have very clear goals. They have like some kind of like logical through line, as opposed to Luffy, who's just kind of there.
And violently oppressive actions and act accordingly. So I really don't think that he'd claim that label, even though he frequently does anti-fascism. His dad definitely would, though.
Yeah.
And speaking of Shay, as for the communism thing, on a surface reading, that does immediately seem a little silly. I mean, Nami, one of the core...
So you're disagreeing with your earlier statements? No, I think Luffy is in its purest form anti-fascist output. I said Oda is a communist, or as a joke, I said One Piece is a communist work. But as far as like what Luffy does, yes, he's not, at least so far, he hasn't been like, I have a commitment to engage in anti-fascist actions. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. He just does it.
OG Straw Hat trio with us from the very first arc, just loves money and treasure. It's kind of her whole thing. It's just so shiny, and having it makes her so happy, and it's so useless to her when it really counts.
Nami's practicing socialism with Chinese characteristics.
Saves up her entire life to buy her freedom from Arlong, but when she finally has enough, he just takes it from her and forces her back under his fishy thumb. Because that's how oppressors operate. You can't stop them from oppressing you by playing their game, by their rules, with their pieces. You have to flip the board. While she never loses the obsession with money that many people who grow up in crippling debt develop, the thing that actually saves Nami is the friends she made along the way.
This is the funniest fucking read. Luffy is not Forrest Gump. Lol. Fuck whoever said that. Luffy is insanely emotionally intelligent and wise. He isn't low IQ. He just has massive ADHD and learning disabilities, people. God, amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Doing a whole bunch of violence on her behalf until the oppression stops. Something they do for a lot of their friends all around the world, and it always works. This is a recurring theme that we see cleverly inverted when the crew finally reaches Arlong's hometown of Fishman Island, whose new place in the world government hasn't actually done anything to dismantle the slave trade or make the surface world safer for fishmen and mermaids. Fisher Tiger and the Sun Pirates accomplished far more in that regard with their total disregard for world government law. Otohime's efforts to change hearts and minds within the system aren't completely worthless. In saving Don Quixote Mjosgard, she ultimately saves her own daughter from being enslaved, but they still tried to capture and enslave her daughter at a meeting of the One Piece UN. And despite ostensibly being affiliated with the world government, the fishmen still need the protection of a crime lord to stop raids on their island, just like the giants on Elbaf do. In that context, it's not hard to see how Arlong and Hody Jones fell down such dark paths. They didn't have many better options. At the same time, though, the arc is quite clear on where those paths will lead. Fisher Tiger himself literally died because he couldn't let go of his hatred for humans. One Piece clearly argues that violent revolution is sometimes, often necessary to effect real change, but it's also careful to caution that—
and also the structures are inherently violent. Like the forms of oppression that governments take are also inherently violent, and it leads to a lot of pain and a lot of torment for regular people. The enslaved masses or an underclass of fishmen.
Revolutions which aim to subjugate out of hatred for the oppressor rather than liberate out of love for the oppressed will ultimately reproduce many of the problems they seek to solve. Blackbeard, whose ultimate goal is world conquest driven by a desire to avenge God Valley, is a prime example of the former, while Luffy, his rival to be Pirate King, is quite literally the embodiment of liberation. Blackbeard's pirates even mirror the organization of the Navy, with the 10 Titanic captains serving under Admiral Teach, in contrast to Luffy, who—
Did I miss a spoiler? Accidentally? I didn't even understand it.
Straight up refuses to accept the other captains of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet as his subordinates, instead opting for an informal sake pledge that they will all come to each other's mutual aid if ever called upon, which is the same principle that organizes the Straw Hat crew themselves. Yes, Luffy is their captain, but so's Usopp sometimes, and he rarely orders his crew around except when snap life or death decisions must be made. They all follow him willingly as a cohort of comrades who've pledged to help each other reach their dreams, and they are all free to leave if they ever disagree. They all share equally in the spoils of their adventures, too. Nami's in charge of the money, but only because the rest of them are idiots, and they all happily lend their their skills to their friends with no expectation of direct compensation. You could certainly call that commune-esque. Some might even say anarchish. And since Luffy's explicit goal is to become the freest man alive,
Being king of the pirates is about being more free than anyone.
you could take that as One Piece arguing that those specific principles of social organization and resource distribution are designed to maximize the freedom of the people living by them. But you could also make the case that that's a selective reading of the text, since Luffy has fought on the side of straight-up monarchists about nearly as often as he's joined up with revolutions, and more than once, he's stopped a full-on populist uprising in its tracks on behalf of an embattled king. Both of those times were to stop fascists who'd either manufactured or co-opted the movement, but Luffy still made friends with both of those kings.
Yeah, Luffy says no to color revolutions, dude. Oh my god. Luffy is anti-color revolution. Luffy is a tanky. He said the Hungarian counter-revolution must stop. Roll the tanks. See, not agenda piece, not agenda piece. I'm not reading through the lines. I'm reading the lines, okay?
So One Piece isn't really advocating for any one specific form of society, so much as the idea that groups of people should be able to determine what their society looks like for themselves without being coerced or manipulated into undermining their own culture, traditions, and basic human needs. What really matters is whether a society has good leaders.
Can you counter his argument because he's saying that it's silly to call One Piece being a communist? What do you mean? He literally, first of all, the endpoint of communism is not at odds with what he's describing. Every part of this video is explaining in great detail that if Luffy's final goal is to achieve full freedom, then ultimately it is technically communist. Luffy is a tank. He's pretty funny because we got evidence. Yeah, I mean, literally, he is. He's also looking at the material conditions of each state. He's not a trot. We know that because he looks at each individual state and analyzes the material conditions of each individual state and decides that for each individual state, there's a different way. Okay. There's a different way to go about it where he's like saying, no, you can have your own version of bourgeois dictatorship, but the methods of achieving said bourgeois dictatorship are dictated by the material conditions of each unique and individual state. That's it. Because like for some, he's saying, you know, we gotta stop a color revolution led by the CIA. In others, he's saying that there is a magnanimous dictator that is not democratically assigned, but abides by the democratic wishes of the population.
And while it doesn't commit to any one model of governance, One Piece does very consistently define what a good leader
Light Yagami is a neoliberal. I agree.
is.
Well, I think he's the most straightforward fascist, right?
A king, a president, a pirate lord, or a god, good leaders in One Piece always put the needs of their people above their own, while evil ones use their people to serve their own ambitions or needs, or just plain old selfish wants.
I mean, this one was like so directly railing against the war economy, the military-industrial complex, the enslavement of an indigenous peoples, in an effort to improve profit margins. It was so insanely on the nose. Drug trafficking, hunger and pollution, climate change. It had it all.
It's in roughly descending order of how evil they are. Oda has a soft spot for dreamers, after all. Even ones with dreams so big they think they have to crush the dreams of others to make them real. There's a certain grudging respect given to villains like Crocodile, Blackbeard, Arlong, even Buggy, who do bad things to make better things possible for themselves and people they care about. Whereas the most despicable villains in One Piece, from Captain Kuro to Don Quixote do Flamingo, are invariably the ones who cast their dreams aside to indulge in their most base desires at everyone else's expense. Emperors Kaido and Big Mom are the ultimate expression of the former, having achieved their dreams, or at least come close enough, and convinced themselves that because they achieved that, they know what's best for everyone under them, while the Celestial Dragons and World Government represent the worst kind of selfish rule. What makes Luffy so special then is that his dream, despite being the biggest and grandest of anyone in the entire world, never infringes on anyone else's. Quite the opposite. As it grows, it lifts up everyone around him, making their dreams more achievable than ever before. Luffy's ideal of maximal freedom isn't about elevating himself to a point where no one can stop him from getting whatever he wants. It's about destroying the barriers to freedom that hold everyone back. If there's a single overriding ideology that defines all of One Piece, it's that people who follow their dreams make the world a better place. And so the best possible world can only come about when everyone is.
Dude, Wano was so crazy because it was like the worst paced. And then, like, I guess it was like largely because of Toei, but it was so incredibly poorly paced. And then all of a sudden, you just nut. Like, the apex is insane. The payoff is out of control. All of a sudden, the art style changes dramatically, and they lean into it. At first, there's like they changed like art direction for some episodes, or at least like some parts of the episodes have the new art direction, and some have the old art direction, and it's fucking insane. Out of nowhere, you're like, oh my god, what this entire work could be. It's part of the reason why I'm actually very excited about the Netflix new One Piece. And not the live action necessarily, but the new one, because I feel like they'll fix the pacing issues there and also redraw everything. I feel like that's going to be amazing. The remake
is free to dream. And that, I think, is what makes the Mugiwara flag such a potent universal symbol. Regardless of ideological specifics, every revolutionary is a dreamer at heart, carrying on the will of all the dreamers before them who were crushed beneath the boot of oppression. Though within the world of One Piece, there is another, even more potent symbol of generational struggle that the world government fears above all others. So much that they've spent the past 8 centuries trying to wipe it and everyone who remembers it from the face of the earth. A symbol that's been present in the manga since nearly the beginning, though its true meaning was only recently revealed with Luffy's new Gear 5 form. Joy Boy, the first pirate, legend of a lost era, a forbidden folk hero sung of in whispers by those whose mere existence has been deemed a crime against the state. There's been quite a bit of debate since Gear 5's reveal over whether it's truly iconic or just a sillier, squigglier version of Super Saiyan. In my opinion, it is absolutely the latter, and that's exactly what makes it so iconic. When a Saiyan becomes super, it's almost always in moments of intense rage or sorrow, those potent emotions fueling the newfound power that they need to kick the ass of the guy who made them feel that way. And this theme has been echoed across countless other shonen battle series when their heroes power up. The villain pushes them to their limits, threatens what they love most, and at their lowest moment, something snaps and they awaken. That's been the genre template for decades now. But Gear 5 doesn't feed on such caustic emotions. It washes them away, drowning out the violent negativity of One Piece's villains with a cheerful drumbeat and uproarious laughter. Rather than just letting Luffy hurt people more efficiently, it transforms both him and the world around him in a way that turns each fight into a goofy little game and literally makes his dreams, however silly they might be, real. In a world ruled by anger and fear, One Piece posits that the key to true liberation is to embrace and embody unrestrained joy. To laugh in our oppressors' faces, even as they are crushed by conveniently timed pianos. That doesn't mean that anger has no place in the fight for liberation, obviously, but One Piece cautions time and again that anger must be directed and purposeful to do more good than harm. In the very first chapter, Shanks laughs off personal insults and even a mild physical assault from the mountain bandits, who end up mistaking that restraint for weakness, but they see just how wrong they are as soon as they lay hands on one of his friends, and Luffy emulates that attitude on Jaya when Bellamy tries to pick a fight with him, refusing to let the petty tyrant control his emotions and only putting a dent in his cocky skull when he starts pissing on someone else's dreams. It's that kind of righteous rage, the kind we feel on behalf of our friends and fellow man, that the world needs more of, while petty anger born from personal affronts is largely useless, wasted energy of no real concern to anyone with real power. That's why it's the man who can laugh from the bottom of his heart, even in the darkest of times, that despots fear most. For that man has fully harnessed his anger and can never be ruled by fear. Of course, knowing when and where to direct our fury is easier said than done, especially in this modern algorithmic age where enragement is engagement. We are conditioned to feel as if under attack from all sides at all times, pushed into a state of perpetual panic that paralyzes our ability to make rational decisions and respond to situations that deserve our anger. And often, the greatest, most dangerous injustices are wholly invisible to us, hidden in plain sight within systems we're taught to take for granted from the day we're born, slowly simmering beneath the cozy little pot of frogs we call society. So how can we ever know when we really need to act? Another great fictional freedom fighter has a pretty good answer to that question, I think, which I'll paraphrase for you now. Don't compare your circumstances to how they were yesterday. Look at how they were years ago. If it used to be okay, but it's not okay anymore, maybe you should do something about it. We're supposed to be leaving a better world for our children, after all, so if it's not better, if you're dealing with cruelty, with neglect, with a ruling class that wastes the people's money on frivolous, selfish bullshit, maybe it's time to get out there and raise your flag. I'm Jeff Thu, professional freedom keyboard warrior.
That was fire, bro. God damn, that was good. Great video. Holy shit. One thing I find important about the principle of anybody who feeds Luffy's friend is that he doesn't act this way out of a desire to have the food. The rice that Tama gives him isn't enough to satisfy him, but Tama's choice to give Luffy all the rice she had is what caused Luffy to consider her someone worth fighting for. Yeah, that was fire. After all these years, I've realized Luffy was the original kindness' punk rock character all along. I think the best part about this, though, while this is correct, I think the best part about it is that Luffy is so aloof that it makes the uninitiated not even think he's like standing for something or being annoying about it or moralizing his position in any capacity. Whereas even Superman is like obviously demonstrating basic competence and basic brain capacity, so much so that like the watchers can still look at that and go, oh yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what he's up to. That's part of the reason why I was saying that Luffy is the way that he is, and it's perfect to, you know, teach people that this is good behavior. If your goal in your work of art is to show someone as like absolute good, you don't always have to match them up against evil enemies and then have them relitigate their position over and over and over again. Oda just kind of shows you that he is a kind individual and is aloof and is just doing the right thing. So I think it makes it so that a lot of people are more charitable to him, even those who I guess would be right wing, even those who I guess would consider themselves to have like the diametrical opposite politics in the real world of the politics that One Piece demonstrates. I heard that fucking Peter Thiel said that One Piece was a right-wing work and that Luffy was the Antichrist or something. And it's pretty obvious that he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. I don't know why Peter Thiel is so obsessed with the Antichrist in general, because he is the Antichrist. So maybe he's like trying to cast a cloud of doubt over the Antichrist allegations by being like, see, would the real Antichrist constantly talk about who the Antichrist is? That's how I feel. But yes, Peter Thiel did talk about One Piece, I saw. And he said Luffy is the Antichrist. He also said Greta Thunberg was the Antichrist. Lefty piece. How do y'all feel about Fishman Island? A lot of people slam this arc, but I think Oda did a good job portraying racism and how people can be destroyed by oppression. The reason why I didn't like Fishman Island was because it had the best potential. And I think the way he like wrapped it up was a little bit like too liberal, if that makes sense.